Our tale begins in an abandoned expanse, where distant buildings loom on the horizon. In a dimly lit room, two men are handcuffed. The soft glow of a single lamp provides the only source of light. The blonde-haired man extends his apologies to what appears to be the professor in the room for the way things have unfolded. The doctor asserts that he, in fact, should be the one extending apologies, given his need for rescue. The man with blonde hair reflects on the mission, convinced that it would have succeeded if not for the betrayal of their informant. What they expected to encounter was supposed to be a militia-level military force. However, the reality was a far cry from expectations, as it included not only rigorously trained soldiers but also a threefold increase in their numbers. He harbors a strong suspicion that it was an intricately laid trap designed to ensnare them. Suddenly, a noise emanates from behind the door, and it swings open. The dimly lit room reveals only the silhouette of a mysterious figure. With a swift, forceful motion, the enigmatic figure delivers a powerful kick to another cuffed soldier within the room. The injured soldier, covered in blood and gasping for breath, bears the brutal aftermath of the impact. The blonde soldier, in a state of distress, cries out to the cuffed soldier, whom he addresses as Sergeant Kim. Fueled by anger and frustration, he unleashes a torrent of profanities towards the figure standing in the doorway. The figure locks eyes with the soldier and utters words that remain incomprehensible to us. Subsequently, the figure strikes the soldier's hand with an object, causing the blonde-haired soldier to crumple to the ground in an instant. As the figure departs, the soldier can't shake the feeling that the mysterious individual was merely toying with them. Sergeant Kim addresses the blonde-haired soldier as Lieutenant and inquires about his well-being. The lieutenant responds with an affirmative and reciprocates the concern, asking about the well-being of their fellow troops. Kim, with uncertainty in his voice, replies that he doesn't have any information but suspects that they might have been taken elsewhere. Suddenly, the door creaks open, and a figure looms in the doorway. The blonde-haired soldier, now adopting a somewhat cocky tone, asks the figure what they want this time. In the next instant, the figure in the doorway collapses, revealing a man standing behind them. The man standing behind the fallen figure appears to be another soldier. He addresses the blonde-haired soldier and asks if his name is Lieutenant Kong Ham Chan. Lieutenant Kong Ham Chan is taken aback by the fact that the new arrival speaks Korean. He inquires about the stranger's identity and the reason for his presence. The mysterious figure reveals that he has come to rescue them, instructing Kong Ham Chan to gather the other prisoners and prepare to leave. The next scene unfolds with the three prisoners sprinting amidst lifeless bodies strewn across the ground, a grim tableau of carnage surrounded by discarded weapons. Leading the way, their rescuer charges forward, brandishing a formidable weapon in his grasp. As they run side by side, Lieutenant Kong Ham Chan inquires about the division to which the mysterious person belongs and the size of their rescue mission. It becomes apparent that the individual is a member of an undisclosed organization and is the sole operative tasked with their rescue. Kong Ham Chan expresses his astonishment at the rescuer managed to eliminate all those adversaries single-handedly, and even more remarkable is the fact that it went unnoticed by everyone in the vicinity. Suddenly, two adversaries emerge before them, wearing expressions of sheer surprise at the sight of the liberated prisoners. The blonde-haired lieutenant shares in the shock of the two men before them, but quickly concludes that the mysterious rescuer may not be able to dispatch both adversaries quietly. He readies his weapon and prepares to confront the individual standing in his path. To Kong Ham Chan's astonishment, their savior boldly charges directly at the enemies. With a swift and precise strike to the neck, their savior incapacitates the first adversary in front. The individual crumples to the ground and remains motionless. Following the incapacitation of the first adversary, their savior swiftly hurls a knife at the second individual. The knife zips through the air and finds its mark with precision. The knife lodges itself directly into the chest of the second adversary. His eyes widen, turning white, and his legs buckle, giving way beneath him. The subsequent scene presents the enigmatic fighter standing in the door frame, with an incapacitated man behind him, bearing a knife lodged in his chest. In front of him, the only visible remnants are the two lifeless legs of the first adversary he defeated. The rescuer addresses the newly liberated prisoners, informing them that from this point onward, they must focus on swift evasion and refrain from engaging in combat, as he pledges to take on any adversary that stands in their way. As they continue to run, the rescuer methodically neutralizes one opponent after another, executing each with astonishing ease and efficiency, without displaying any signs of struggle. Lieutenant Kongham Chan, with a bewildered expression, gazes at their rescuer and remarks, "This guy is a monster. His movements are far beyond what a typical soldier would be capable of." Upon finally reaching the invigorating outdoors, the rescuer pauses, positioning himself behind a corner, and cautiously peers around it. He raises his fist, signaling for a 1-minute pause, which leaves the blonde lieutenant puzzled. He questions the reason for the delay. The mysterious figure, instead of answering directly, gazes slightly past the lieutenant, hinting at something amiss. As the camera pivots, it reveals the professor and sergeant both in a state of extreme exhaustion. The professor kneels on the ground, panting heavily. The blonde-haired man reflects on the situation, realizing that he was so preoccupied with running that he didn't consider their stamina. A tinge of embarrassment washes over him for this oversight. When he turns back to the mysterious figure, he can't help but think that this individual had calculated every detail meticulously. While observing the mysterious figure, the blonde-haired man's attention is drawn to the distinct feature of black pupils. His mind retrieves the pieces of information he has gathered, the initially clumsy but grammatically correct Korean spoken by this individual, and now, the enigmatic detail of the black pupils, which further deepens the aura of mystery surrounding him. With newfound motivation, the blonde-haired man ventures to ask his rescuer if he is Korean. After posing the question, a prolonged silence envelopes the scene. Without directly addressing the question, the mysterious figure declares that their time is up and urges them to keep moving. Together, they dash through vast expanses of swaying grain. At the edge of the grain sea, they reach a place covered in lush grass. Atop this grassy knoll, a green pickup truck awaits, occupied by 4 military personnel. Spotting the escapees, the soldiers in the truck become ecstatic and shout excitedly at the lieutenant. The lieutenant's face lights up with happiness, and he eagerly inquires about their situation, asking, "What happened to you guys?" One of the squadron members turns to the mysterious figure and acknowledges, "He rescued us." It becomes apparent that the mysterious figure had instructed them to wait at the grassy spot while he vanished momentarily. The next thing they know, they are reunited with the enigmatic savior. Following their discussion, the mysterious figure begins to speak. He explains that his mission in this area is complete, and advises them to head in a southwest direction until they encounter other people. The lieutenant expresses his gratitude and privately acknowledges that he had suspected the mysterious figure was a mercenary. He extends his hand, offering a handshake as a gesture of appreciation. With his arm extended and a hopeful look in his eyes, the lieutenant expresses his gratitude, acknowledging that even if it was just a mission for the mysterious figure, he still deeply appreciates the fact that they saved him and his troops. As the mercenary gazes at the lieutenant's outstretched hand, something unfolds behind them, catching their attention. Both of them are startled as the sound of an explosion resonates from behind, causing them to whirl around in shock. The mysterious figure shouts urgently for everyone to get down on the ground. However, their efforts prove futile, as the ground suddenly erupts in a violent explosion, plunging everything into darkness. As the lieutenant regains his senses, he surmises that the explosion was likely caused by a mortar round. The shock has left him with impaired hearing, but despite his injuries, his foremost concern remains his companions. He turns to check on them. Relieved to find his companions seemingly unharmed, the lieutenant breathes a sigh of relief. However, as he turns towards the sound of the approaching gunshots, his gaze locks onto the source of the gunfire. What he witnesses is the mysterious man. Despite the close call with the mortar round, the enigmatic figure swiftly regains his composure and launches into counterattack, defending their group. The lieutenant is taken aback with disbelief as he observes the mysterious figure. He has just learned that this individual was a mercenary, only to realize that the supposed veteran is, in fact, just a child. It becomes apparent that the explosion had blown away the headband, exposing the kid's true identity. The scene transitions, and it's now 6 months later. In the background, a school comes into view. We transition to a classroom where a group of girls appears to be quite smitten, evident from their blushing faces. The teacher, noticing the commotion, calls for the class's undivided attention. Multiple students in the classroom gaze at what's in front of them. Among them, one student appears noticeably annoyed, while another seems rather bored with the proceedings. The camera pans around, revealing what the classroom sees. A female teacher stands at the front, introducing a boy with distinctive gray hair and striking black eyes. The former mercenary, now identified as Ijin, introduces himself to the class and warmly greets everyone, saying, "It's nice to meet you all." Our story begins at a school, the same one we previously encountered. We shift our focus to a schoolgirl with shoulder-length brown hair, donned in a brownie sh school uniform. She contemplates that her brother is likely already in class at this point. Her thoughts are interrupted by a girl who bursts into the classroom, conversing loudly with her friends. She excitedly mentions that she just spotted an attractive guy near the school office, disclosing that he's a recent senior transfer student. All four of the girls in her group blush deeply, clearly captivated by this new arrival. We return to the brown-haired girl, who assumes that the new transfer student is her older brother. We discover that the brother she had been thinking about was presumed dead in a plane crash, along with their parents, a decade ago. Astonishingly, after a long and agonizing 10 years, he has returned to them. The scene reveals an elderly man tenderly holding the face of a young man, who is none other than Ijin, the mercenary we encountered earlier. The young woman and Ijin share an intense gaze, and she quietly questions herself whether this could truly be her long-lost older brother. With a warm, reassuring smile, Ijin seeks to comfort the girl, conveying that he means no harm to her. Amidst someone calling out her name, we come to know that the girl is named Ijin. The loud voice jerks her out of her daydream, back to reality. It appears that the one calling her name is another girl with blonde hair. Frustrated, she points out that she had been calling Ijin's name multiple times to get her attention. The blonde-haired girl insists that Ijin hand over her gym clothes, inquiring if she has indeed remembered to bring them as she had been reminded to do so earlier. In response, Ijin confirms that she did bring her gym clothes but raises a valid concern: if she lends them to her friend, what should she wear during the gym lesson? The blonde-haired girl, clearly agitated, delivers a harsh blow to Ijin's head. She vents her anger, berating Ijin for daring to talk back and making it clear that she couldn't care less about what Ijin will wear, asserting that it's her own problem to solve. The bully issues a menacing threat, warning Ijin that she'll beat her until she cries in front of everyone, just as she has done before. The scene transitions to class 3-2. Ijin stands at the front of the class as the teacher introduces him, explaining that he has spent a considerable amount of time living abroad. The teacher requests the class's assistance in helping Ijin adjust to his new life. The camera pans through the class, revealing a variety of students. Some of them appear happy and welcoming, while others seem annoyed or less enthusiastic about the introduction of the new student. The teacher directs the new student to take a seat in the back, gesturing toward an empty desk. As he walks to his designated spot, he passes by another student wearing an orange jacket. The individual in the orange jacket appears angry and cannot comprehend why everyone is so enamored with Ijin. He believes that Ijin looks rather pathetic in his eyes. Behind him, someone mentions the name of the person in the orange jacket, revealing that his name is Lee Jae-hyung. Lee comprehends the unspoken message from the person behind him and nonchalantly extends his leg to obstruct Ijin's path as he walks by. Ijin comes to an abrupt halt, frozen in place. Ijin and Lee both divert their gaze toward the ground where the new student stands, positioned just a centimeter in front of Lee's feet. As Lee meets Ijin's eyes, he encounters a formidable and intense expression from Ijin that seems to convey a clear message: never do this again. Lee, in response, calls Ijin an asshole and demands that he refrain from glaring at him in such a manner. Ijin recalls the advice and wisdom imparted by the blonde soldiers from his past experiences. Ijin reflects on the guidance given to him by the blonde soldiers, emphasizing the importance of avoiding fights and conflict at all costs during his stay in Korea. With an exasperated sigh, Ijin responds, remarking that he's well aware of this advice. The blonde-haired man, appearing surprised, playfully comments that he didn't know Ijin knew that. In response, Ijin explains that he doesn't comprehend the logic of rushing into a conflict when he lacks adequate information about the situation. He has no intention of recklessly charging forward and meeting the fate of an amateur who moves too hastily. Amidst the banter, Ijin locks eyes with the blonde soldier and delivers a firm statement, asserting that he is a seasoned professional who has endured a decade of life on the battlefield. The blonde lieutenant, now appearing concerned and apprehensive, clarifies that he imparts this advice not out of fear for Ijin but because he worries for Ijin's potential opponents. We return to the present, with Ijin standing before Lee, the person in the orange jacket. Lee confronts Ijin, inquiring why he's glaring at him and suggesting that Ijin may have a death wish. The teacher takes notice of the situation in her classroom and questions Ijin about why he has come to a sudden standstill. Ijin offers an apology and resumes his walk, moving past the jacket-wearing bully without further confrontation. Lee wears a smug expression and taunts Ijin, suggesting that Ijin is fearful and not as impressive as he may seem. As the new student takes his seat, the teacher designates the person sitting next to Ijin, named Park Young-chan, to look after him. The teacher bids farewell to the class and extends her best wishes for the upcoming lessons. After the teacher departs, Park Young-chan introduces himself to our protagonist. Ijin confirms that his name is Ijin. Park then appears anxious and checks behind himself, whispering to Ijin that he must have been taken aback because Lee extended his foot to trip him earlier. Park proceeds to warn Ijin about the two bullies in their class. The first, seated behind Lee, is named Ju Hyukjin, and the second is, as previously mentioned, Lee Jae-hyung. Ijin expresses his gratitude to Park for the warning. Park, forming a favorable impression of Ijin, assures him that if he ever has any questions, he can always reach out to Park, who will do his best to provide answers and help in any way he can. The scene transitions to the first lesson, where an older teacher with white hair is ready to begin. Ijin scans the classroom, taking in the various scenes around him. Park appears focused on the front of the classroom, while someone in front of Ijin seems to be dozing off. Several students are engrossed in their smartphones, and outside, a sports class is engaged in their activities. Ijin's mind drifts back to his time in the military, recollecting a grim and rainy scenario, with relentless downpour and harrowing memories. In his memory, we witness him undergoing training, honing his skills, and firing his rifle at practice targets. Ijin opens his eyes in the present and reflects on the peaceful nature of his current surroundings, contrasting with the memories of his military training. Later in the day, after school, Ijin is seen waiting at the school's entrance for his little sister. His little sister appears surprised and asks Ijin if he waited for her. He confirms this and explains that he wanted to accompany her. He inquires if she already had plans. She shakes her head and clarifies that it's not the case. Ijin interrupts her mid-sentence and suggests that they go home together. Dayun, Ijin's sister, looks delighted as they walk away together. While they make their way home, an awkward silence envelopes them, and neither says a word. Ijin eventually breaks the ice by acknowledging the awkwardness between them. Dayun, however, appears anxious and denies that there is any awkwardness at all. Ijin admits that he shares the same sentiments. He explains that he was just 9 years old at the time of the accident and has few recollections of Dayun or their grandfather. All he can recall is having a little sister and a grandfather. He acknowledges that it must have been even tougher for Dayun, as she was only 7 years old when it happened. As they walk past a group of teenagers engaged in conversation about Heejin's expected arrival time, Dayun appears apprehensive and glances around nervously. One of the girls in the group spots Dayun and approaches her, inquiring if she is indeed who they think she is. Dayun is gripped with fear and panic, not knowing how to respond to the situation. The girl gazes at Dayun and inquires if the boy beside her is her boyfriend. She makes a somewhat disparaging comment about Dayun dating, adding an element of sarcasm to her words. Ijin's younger sister appears shocked and hastily corrects the group, informing them that it's just her brother, not her boyfriend. The girl in the group is taken aback by this revelation, as she didn't even know Dayun had a brother. Ijin inquires of his sister if the girls in the group are her friends, and Dayun tells a white lie, saying that they are friends from her class. The teenage girl gives Dayun a skeptical and somewhat hostile look, pressing her to confirm if they truly are her friends. Ijin senses the negative energy coming from the group and fixes them with an intense and threatening stare. One of the guys in the group reciprocates by warning Ijin that unless he wants trouble, he should avert his gaze. The other guy in the group notices that Ijin is still watching them, intensifying the tension. Ijin continues to observe them and questions if they might be seeking a confrontation. The first guy from the group approaches Ijin and confronts him, asking whether he genuinely wishes to provoke trouble or if he's merely trying to appear tough in front of his little sister. Ijin remains remarkably composed and reflects that, for someone attempting to incite a brawl, his aggressor seems rather defenseless. Ijin observes that his adversary is swiftly closing the distance without concern, leaving himself exposed and vulnerable. Additionally, he notices that the guy in front of him is not armed with any weapons. Ijin finds it perplexing that the individual is so confident despite openly showcasing his defenselessness. The lieutenant's advice echoes in Ijin's mind, "Do not fight." Feeling irritated, Ijin sighs and decides to leave the guy alone. However, before Ijin can completely disengage, the guy in front of him seizes his shirt and raises his hand, preparing to strike him. In a sudden turn of events, Dayun bows down and apologizes on behalf of her brother. She explains that he's not accustomed to the local culture because he lived abroad for an extended period. The bully becomes incensed and retorts that it doesn't matter at all and questions who cares about such excuses. Ijin gazes at Dayun and notices the fear etched across her face. With a swift motion, Ijin liberates himself from the bully's grip, causing the troublemaker to tumble to the ground in pain. Ijin approaches his little sister and instructs her to remain still for a moment. He then drapes his jacket over her face, blocking her view. The bully charges at Ijin, hurling insults and calling him a derogatory name. With a single, swift, and forceful punch, Ijin incapacitates the bully, causing him to topple backward and land flat on his face. Ijin stands triumphant in front of the bullies, but he can't help but think to himself that he has already broken his promise to the lieutenant on the very first day. The scene opens to a breathtaking view of nature, with majestic mountains in the background and the sun rising on the horizon. In the foreground, lush trees frame the picturesque landscape. The scene shifts to a group of half-naked men, clad in military-style camouflaged pants and wearing dog tags, engaged in a vigorous run. In the background, two men can be seen overseeing the group. The camera shifts its focus to two men, one being the blonde-haired lieutenant and the other a man with black hair. The black-haired man inquires of the lieutenant whether today marks the beginning of Ijin's school journey. The lieutenant acknowledges this and expresses his concern, despite having educated Ijin for half a year. The black-haired man reflects that Ijin has spent the last 10 years living in an environment like that since he was just 9 years old. He expresses hope that Ijin can successfully adapt to his new surroundings. The lieutenant appears confident and asserts that Ijin will undoubtedly be fine because he personally undertook the task of educating him. We return to the previous scene, with the bully sprawled on the ground, his eyes rolled back and his nose bleeding. Ijin is taken aback by this and wonders if the guy genuinely passed out from just that one punch. Ijin glances to his side and spots the other two bullies who were part of the group. Out of nowhere, the former mercenary sprints forward and launches an attack on the other bully. The second guy is sent flying over the railing and collapses to the ground immediately. The last bully is taken aback by Ijin's intense gaze, and their eyes lock in a tense moment. Ijin regards the bully with a predator's determination, akin to how a predator eyes its prey. The standoff is abruptly interrupted by Ijin's little sister, who has removed the jacket and appears surprised. She questions Ijin about what occurred, mentioning that she was only covered up for a brief moment. As Dayun looks around, she notices the two bullies lying unconscious on the floor. Ijin approaches his sister and apologizes to her, inquiring if she was startled. Awkwardly, he then asks her if she'd like something to eat and if he should buy her a meal. She appears surprised and replies that it's fine, she doesn't need anything. Dayun returns Ijin's jacket, and the two of them continue walking home. While they walk, the third bully looks at Ijin and Dayun with apprehension and wonders if Ijin is the same person she encountered a moment ago. Once they are alone again, Dayun inquires if Ijin was the one who attacked the two bullies. Ijin meets her gaze and confirms that he was the one who confronted them. Dayun is taken aback by this response, as she didn't expect her brother to be someone who would engage in such actions. The camera provides a view from behind the two siblings, and Dayun informs Ijin that in this country, it could be considered impolite to give people such intense stares. Ijin goes on to explain that even in the place where he used to live, people needed to be cautious about making eye contact because it could be potentially risky or dangerous. Dayun appears surprised and questions why he did it then. Ijin responds confidently that it seemed like those bullies were causing trouble. The scene transitions to a building at night. Inside the building, we see Dayun and her grandfather. Her grandfather suggests to Ijin that he should take a seat and enjoy some fruits. Ijin, already donning an apron, insists that it's fine, and he'll take care of the dishes so his grandfather can have a seat. The grandfather looks down with a hint of embarrassment and hopes that the food met Ijin's taste because he did his best to prepare it. The young man responds to his grandfather's query with a heartfelt reply, stating that he always enjoys his cooking, and it's always delicious. The grandfather tries to play it cool, claiming he's relieved, but deep down, he's genuinely elated. He had even enrolled in cooking classes after learning that Ijin was coming back, all to make sure he could prepare delicious meals for his grandson. The sibling's grandfather then turns to Dayun and inquires if she also enjoyed the meal. Dayun smiles and responds that she thought it was really delicious. While Ijin holds a plate in one hand and a sponge in the other, his grandfather inquires how his first day of school went. Ijin begins to speak but notices Dayun's anxious expression. He turns to her and assures her that there were no issues on his first day. His grandfather expresses happiness and states that he's relieved to hear that. As the scene shifts to the outside of the building, we hear Ijin bidding goodnight to his grandfather. As Ijin lies in bed, he reflects on the time he saw his grandfather again after a decade of separation. We see his grandfather, tears in his eyes, embracing Ijin tightly. He expresses his overwhelming joy that Ijin was able to come back, and how glad he is. On their way home, his grandfather asks him if he doesn't have any memories from when he was younger. However, he quickly follows up by saying that it's okay, and the most important thing is that Ijin is alive and back with them. The next memory Ijin recalls is his grandfather offering him food, and in front of him, there's a table laden with an assortment of dishes. His grandfather mentions that he wasn't certain about Ijin's preferences, so he prepared a variety of dishes, hoping that at least some of them would suit his taste. We see Ijin drifting off to sleep, his last thoughts consisting of just 2 words, a family. Next, we find ourselves in an airplane. The plane is experiencing turbulence, and panic begins to spread among the passengers. The oxygen masks deploy, and passengers in the plane scramble to secure one for themselves. We see a young Ijin and an adult, likely his father, assisting Ijin in putting the oxygen mask on his face. The 2 adults sitting on either side of Ijin begin to hold him, likely trying to comfort and reassure him during the turbulent flight. The scene shifts to an exterior view of the airplane. Its engines have exploded, and the plane is descending rapidly. Ijin wakes up from his nightmare, sitting up abruptly as if he's about to vomit. He clutches his face with both hands, gasping for air as he tries to calm himself. He reassures himself that it was just a dream. Our protagonist hears a sound coming from outside his room. As he exits his room, he is greeted by the sight of his little sister wearing an apron. She smiles at him and mentions that she was just about to wake him up. Ijin inquires about the whereabouts of their grandfather. Dayun informs Ijin that their grandfather left for work at dawn, leaving Ijin surprised by the early start. His little sister explains that their grandfather only took a few days off after Ijin's return, but now he needs to resume work. She also mentions that she has to leave early today, so she will head out ahead of him. Standing at the entrance, she informs her brother that she left the leftovers from last night on the table, so he can have that for breakfast. After Dayun leaves, Ijin finds himself alone in the room. The scene transitions back to Ijin's and Dayun's school. The blonde-haired girl asks her friend if she's sure that the new transfer student is really Dayun's brother. We return to the aftermath of the previous day when Ijin and Dayun left the scene. The group of bullies is still recovering from the impact of Ijin's punches. The girl is on her knees next to one of the bullies, who is still unconscious. She's scared and worried that such a powerful reaction from just one hit is possible. The blonde-haired girl arrives and asks her friend what happened to the two guys who were beaten up. She's curious and concerned about their condition. The other girl remains silent, lost in her thoughts, worrying about the consequences of targeting Dayun. The girl recalls the intense and intimidating look in Ijin's eyes, which had left her feeling frightened. The girl tries to reassure herself by thinking that everything will be fine because Ijin is part of the alpha group among the third-year students. It appears that Dayun has been hit by something, and she cries out in pain. The blonde-haired bully confronts Dayun, telling her to stop overreacting like a little bitch. Dayun inquires about their destination, asking where they are taking her. The blonde-haired bully, visibly angered, berates Dayun, accusing her of acting tough because she has a brother now. The blonde-haired bully threatens Dayun, telling her to follow her if she wants to avoid trouble. Dayun is kicked and falls backward, hurt and shocked by the sudden attack. The two bullies stand over her and ask her if they didn't tell her to not act out. Dayun asks what they are talking about. The blonde-haired girl says that this is about the other day where her brother beat up the two guys. The bully threatens Dayun, saying that Ijin's school life is also going to be difficult because of what happened. Dayun inquires about the situation, asking, "What do you mean?" The blonde-haired girl then explains that the individuals Ijin had an encounter with yesterday were actually friends of her older brother. She speculates that her brother may have already crossed paths with Ijin by now. Dayun, startled and concerned, raises her voice, demanding to know, "What are you planning to do to my older brother?" The blonde-haired girl, clearly agitated, reacts by slapping Dayun and sternly warns her, "Never scream at me again." Ijin's younger sister bursts into tears and rushes away from the scene, overwhelmed with guilt, believing that her actions may lead to Ijin getting hurt. In Ijin's classroom, a sense of fear and panic washes over the students as four imposing figures enter. Among them, two are the bullies from the previous incident, their presence heightening the tension in the room. The four men make their way towards Ijin, who seems disinterested, his gaze fixed on the window as they approach. The atmosphere in the classroom grows increasingly tense. As the four individuals close in on Ijin, Dayun suddenly bursts into the classroom, catching their attention. She shouts Ijin's name, her disheveled and dirted appearance immediately drawing concern from those present. The situation takes an unexpected turn. Ijin turns to face Dayun and immediately notices the extent of her injuries. His expression shifts from boredom to deep concern as he takes in the sight of his friend's battered state. The punk with orange hair, apparently trying to relate to the situation, remarks, "Yeah, my sister's always nagging me for favors too." His comment attempts to create a sense of understanding or common ground, but the tension in the room remains palpable. The blonde-haired girl, in a moment of vulnerability, adds, "I'd be worried sick if my brother got beaten up too." This statement reveals that the orange-haired punk is her older brother, shedding light on the dynamics within the group of individuals involved. The situation appears to be more complex than initially thought. Ijin, however, remains fixated on his younger sister Dayun and her well-being, seemingly oblivious to the interactions and revelations taking place around him. His primary concern is ensuring her safety and addressing the injuries she has sustained. In Ijin's classroom, his classmates are engaged in various activities. Some are engrossed in conversations, others are busy cleaning the blackboard, a few students appear to be taking a quick nap, while some diligently study, creating a typical scene in a school setting with diverse activities and levels of engagement. Ijin's chair neighbor looks visibly nervous and fearful. Beads of sweat cascade down his face, resembling raindrops on a stormy day, as a mysterious white object falls to the ground, further intensifying his unease. The atmosphere in the classroom grows increasingly tense. As the tension in the classroom mounts, someone throws another white object at Ijin's chair neighbor, this time directly at his head. The two bullies from Ijin's class, with the orange jacket wearing one leading the mischief, hold a piece of eraser in their hands. The orange-jacketed bully laughs and boasts, "Headshot. That's 3 hits in a row, 2 body shots and now a headshot." The blonde-haired bully turns to one of his classmates and pressures him to hand over an eraser. The student reluctantly agrees and surrenders his eraser to the bully. The classroom atmosphere remains tense as the bullies seem determined to continue their disruptive actions. After obtaining the eraser, the bully prepares himself with a powerful step, indicating his intention to launch another object and continue his disruptive behavior. With a significant display of force, the bully hurls the eraser directly at Ijin's new friend, striking him squarely on the head. In response to the impact, Ijin's friend vocalizes his discomfort, expressing that the blow did indeed hurt. The blonde-haired bully, with a sense of pride and accomplishment, exclaims, "I'm the best. I won the game." His declaration underscores his satisfaction with his actions, despite the discomfort and distress it has caused to others in the classroom. The two bullies engage in a discussion to determine who had the more impressive shot. The blonde bully argues that his shot was akin to a powerful AK rifle, while he characterizes his friend's shot as being no more potent than that of a simple pistol. The orange jacket-wearing punk, after the banter, lets out a hearty laugh and exclaims, "I'm going to use an M4 then." With a vigorous swing, he propels the next eraser into the air, ready to continue their disruptive antics. As Ijin enters the frame and calmly walks to his seat, the eraser thrown by the bullies hits him squarely and falls to the floor. The two bullies, their earlier bravado fading, appear surprised by Ijin's nonchalant response and presence in the situation. The classroom falls silent as all eyes are now on Ijin. Unfazed by the eraser hitting him, Ijin calmly takes his seat in the classroom. Meanwhile, his newly made friend, feeling both embarrassed and frightened, remains seated at his desk, clearly impacted by the recent events and the attention focused on them. In the next scene, the orange-haired bully expresses his frustration, saying, "Something about Ijin just annoys the hell out of me." His companion, the other punk, suggests a solution, saying, "If Ijin is the problem, let's make him stop annoying us." He then proposes the idea of calling Ijin over after school, implying that they may be planning to confront and potentially harm him. With a sinister smile, the orange-haired punk expresses his approval for the plan, indicating his enthusiasm for the potential confrontation with Ijin after school. Ijin's neighbor, attempting to conceal the recent bullying incident, asks in surprise why Ijin has arrived so early. Ignoring the neighbor's question, Ijin, displaying his characteristic concern for others, inquires if everything is okay with his neighbor. Despite his own experiences, Ijin remains focused on the well-being of those around him. Ijin's friend, sitting with the bullies in the background, looks frightened and hastily reassures Ijin, "Everything's fine." However, his apprehensive demeanor suggests that he may not be entirely honest about the situation. Ijin's friend, trying to divert the conversation away from the recent events, asks him what he has planned for after school and invites him to join him to explore the city. He expresses his desire to show Ijin around, offering an opportunity to spend time together and possibly alleviate the tension in the classroom. Ijin politely apologizes and explains that he can't join his friend today because he's going home with his little sister. His friend looks genuinely surprised to learn about Ijin's little sister and asks if she transferred to this school with Ijin, showing curiosity about their family situation. Ijin corrects his neighbor, mentioning that his sister was already attending this school. In response, the neighbor asks for her name, as he might know her. This conversation opens up an opportunity for them to discuss their connections and acquaintances within the school. When Ijin reveals that his sister's name is Yudayun, his neighbor's face turns pale. He asks if Ijin is referring to the Dayun from the first year, indicating a possible recognition or connection between Ijin's sister and someone from the school. The former mercenary, taken aback by Ijin's knowledge of Dayun, asks why his neighbor looks so surprised. It seems there's more to the situation involving Dayun and the school that Ijin might not be aware of. Ijin's new friend begins to explain that Dayun's school life has become difficult recently. Seeing Ijin's interest, he elaborates on what has been happening. Ijin asks for more details, concerned about his sister's well-being. Ijin's friend goes on to explain that Dayun's academic excellence and kindness made her the subject of affection for many boys during middle school. Unfortunately, one particular boy became infatuated with her, leading to complications. Another girl, driven by jealousy, had a crush on the same boy and, in her envy, began bullying Dayun. The situation provides more insight into the challenges that Dayun has been facing in school. Ijin, surprised by this revelation, questions why nobody took action to intervene and help Dayun when she was being bullied. His concern for his sister's well-being is evident, and he seems perplexed by the lack of support from others in her difficult situation. Ijin's friend sheds light on the situation by explaining that the reason nobody intervened is that the older brother of the bully is a powerful figure in the third-year Class 3, named Kim Ki-soo. He further reveals that Dayun's life took a turn for the worse when she ended up in the same class as the jealous girl. He mentions that people are astonished that Dayun still continues to attend school, implying the severity of the situation and the challenges she faces. Ijin, looking down, reflects on the fact that the bullying intensified because of a boy Dayun had a crush on. His friend, Park, acknowledges this but adds that bullies like them often don't need a special reason to target and mistreat others. This highlights the unfortunate reality of bullying in some school environments. The scene transitions to Ijin's home, where he sits at a table with Dayun and their grandfather. The grandfather expresses his hope that Ijin can adapt well to his new school life. In response, Ijin attempts to reassure his grandfather, saying that there's no need to worry about his adjustment to the school. The grandfather, still concerned due to Ijin's 10 years spent overseas, expresses his worry. He then turns to Dayun and inquires about her school life. Dayun responds with confidence, reminding him that she always does well in school, reassuring her grandfather that she's doing fine academically. The old man, pleased with Dayun's response, reassures Ijin by acknowledging that she consistently excels in her studies. He goes on to explain to Ijin that Dayun consistently receives compliments from her teachers for her studiousness and exemplary manners. The family takes pride in Dayun's dedication to her education and her positive reputation at school. The scene concludes with Ijin gazing proudly at his little sister, filled with admiration for her academic achievements and the strong character she has demonstrated at school. Ijin expresses his gratitude to Park for sharing the information about his sister's situation. Park, acknowledging Ijin's concern, responds by saying, "You must be worried." The two friends continue to discuss the challenges facing Dayun and their plans for the future. Before Park can finish his sentence, a loud bang interrupts the conversation. The door is forcefully kicked open by one of the punks who had previously faced Ijin, creating a sudden and unexpected entrance. A group of individuals, led by a guy with orange hair and a neck tattoo, storms into the classroom. The two bullies, previously confident, now appear surprised and slightly fearful. The leader is introduced as Kim Ki-soo. The blonde-haired bully admits that even he has encountered difficulties dealing with Kim, hinting at the intimidating presence of this new character. The atmosphere in the classroom grows tense as Kim Ki-soo's group arrives. The guy who was previously beaten by Ijin points towards Ijin, seated next to the window, and informs Kim Ki-soo that he's the one who beat them up. Kim Ki-soo, the orange-haired leader, observes the beaten individuals and expresses his surprise at their condition after being defeated by what he considers a pathetic-looking loser. The individuals attempt to defend themselves by claiming that they were caught off guard during the altercation. Kim Ki-soo loudly calls out to Ijin, instructing him to come forward. Initially, Park considers that the call is meant for him to stand up, but before he can react, Ijin promptly rises from his seat and asks if the individual in front of him is indeed Kim Ki-soo. The two bullies from Ijin's class, previously confident but now visibly frightened, share their apprehension about the upcoming situation. Despite their differences, they both seem to agree on one thing: they believe Ijin is likely to lose this fight. The individual addressing Ijin wears a smirk and comments on his surprise that Ijin already knows his name, despite being new to the school. Ijin responds with silence, fixing the individual with an emotionless and unwavering gaze. Kim Ki-soo remarks that Ijin's glare is rather unpleasant and insists that one of his followers bring Ijin to him. The situation appears to be escalating, and Ijin's unyielding demeanor does not go unnoticed by Kim Ki-soo and his group. Amid the escalating tension between Ijin, Kim Ki-soo, and the others, Dayun rushes into the classroom, screaming and visibly injured, panting heavily. Her sudden arrival takes everyone by surprise. Upon seeing Dayun's distress and injuries, a worried expression quickly washes over Ijin's face. His concern for his sister is palpable, and the focus of the situation shifts as they address her condition and what has happened. Kim turns to Dayun and addresses her as Heejin's errand girl, insinuating that she's there on behalf of her brother. He questions whether she was concerned about her brother, Ijin, and takes the opportunity to express his annoyance with his own sister, stating that she's constantly bothersome. In that moment, Heejin enters the frame and defends herself, asserting that anyone would naturally be concerned if their sibling were beaten up. She argues that her concern for her brother's well-being is entirely justified, emphasizing the strong bond between siblings. Dayun takes in the scene before her and observes the 4 bullies surrounding Ijin. A scared expression washes over her face as she realizes the danger her brother is facing. She becomes increasingly concerned for Ijin's well-being as she watches the situation unfold. Dayun, overwhelmed by the situation, begins to cry and apologizes to Ijin for inadvertently putting him in danger. Ijin addresses her by name and offers comfort, assuring her that there's no need to apologize. In a swift and decisive move, Ijin sprints forward and incapacitates the first bully with a powerful punch to the neck. The bully immediately crumples to the floor, rendered unable to continue the confrontation. Ijin, his eyes filled with kindness and assurance, directs his gaze to his little sister and comforts her, saying, "You're not at fault, Dayun. It's the fault of these bullies in front of us." He reassures her and prioritizes her well-being, emphasizing that the blame lies with those who initiated the confrontation. Seizing the opportunity, one of the remaining bullies sprints forward and attempts to launch an attack on Ijin. Ijin skillfully dodges to the side and maneuvers the bully's arm, bringing it to his side. His swift reaction and control over the situation demonstrate his martial prowess in the face of adversity. Capitalizing on his control over the bully's arm, Ijin directs it in front of the bully and uses his own hand to deliver a precise punch to the bully's throat, incapacitating him with a well-executed move. The situation continues to evolve with Ijin's swift actions. The impact of Ijin's punch to the bully's throat causes him to spit out and fall to his knees, effectively incapacitated and unable to continue the fight. Ijin's self-defense skills prove effective in handling the situation. Ijin stands behind the defeated bully, who clutches his throat, appearing in distress and in a precarious state. The severity of the situation becomes evident as the bully struggles to breathe, emphasizing the impact of Ijin's actions in the confrontation. As the next bully attempts to strike Ijin, he skillfully dodges the attack and swiftly incapacitates the bully with a powerful punch to the gut. The bully is knocked out by the force of the blow. The leader of the group, Kim Ki-soo, appears shocked and taken aback by the rapid turn of events unfolding before him. The swift and effective actions of Ijin have clearly caught him off guard, leading to a moment of disbelief in this confrontational situation. Kim Ki-soo, still processing the turn of events, questions himself internally, wondering if he truly witnessed what just occurred in front of him. The unexpected turn of events has left him in a state of disbelief and uncertainty. The entire classroom is filled with surprise and disbelief as they witness Ijin's swift and effective actions in the confrontation. The unexpected turn of events has left everyone stunned, and they struggle to comprehend what transpired before their eyes. Ijin fixes a menacing and determined gaze on Kim Ki-soo, his voice filled with anger and concern. He directly confronts Kim, asking if he's the one responsible for making his little sister's life difficult. Ijin's class appears fearful as they witness the events unfolding before them. Before them, Kim and Ijin stand facing each other, with the other punks lying on the ground behind Ijin. Kim remarks that Ijin seems to possess a considerable repertoire of tricks. Ijin maintains an emotionless gaze upon the orange-haired bully, while Kim, in the meantime, takes a determined step forward, readying himself for a potent kick aimed at Ijin. Kim delivers a forceful side kick to Ijin's neck, making direct contact. The orange-haired punk appears elated, convinced that this powerful strike to the head will be too much for Ijin to endure. To everyone's astonishment, Ijin swiftly blocks the kick using his left arm, fixing a lethal glare upon his adversary. A mixture of fear and surprise crosses Kim's face as he realizes that Ijin blocked his initial kick. Determined, he believes that targeting the other side might work, and he launches another powerful kick. However, Ijin effortlessly blocks the second kick as well, leaving Kim bewildered. With a swift motion, Ijin seizes Kim's leg and pulls him closer. Ijin delivers a powerful punch, striking Kim squarely in the face. A spray of blood erupts, leaving uncertainty about whether it originated from Ijin's fist or Kim's face. The orange-haired bully is forcefully propelled backward by the sheer impact of Ijin's punch, blood splattering in all directions. As Kim manages to sit up, it becomes apparent that the blood seen earlier is coming from Kim's nose. He starts to utter profanities, his gaze shifting to something truly dreadful. A profound fear overtakes him, and he appears genuinely terrified for his life. Before Kim, Ijin stands resolute. His gaze communicates to his opponent that he has no qualms about ending him right then and there. The orange-haired punk appears fearful, apprehensive about what Ijin might do next. Ijin delivers a single, powerful kick directly to Kim's head, causing even more blood to gush from his battered form. The camera perspective shifts to an overhead view, revealing Ijin standing amidst a circle of the punks, all of them lying on the ground in a state of collapse. Every individual in the classroom wears an expression of profound surprise at the unfolding events. The two bullies from Ijin's class find it difficult to fathom that Ijin could defeat Kim Ki-soo. Shock courses through them. Ijin's sister, Dayun, holds her hand over her mouth, unable to believe what she's witnessing. Finally, Kim's sister stands there in disbelief, struggling to come to terms with what just transpired. Ijin begins to take deliberate steps forward, heading in the direction of the two bullies who had harmed Dayun. The girls, seeing Ijin's approach, are filled with fear, apprehensive about what he might do to them. Ijin fixes the same intense gaze upon the girls that he directed at the bullies earlier. He then clenches his fist, preparing for another potent punch. The blonde-haired bully becomes visibly terrified, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. However, before any further action could take place, Dayun intervenes, grabbing Ijin's arm and pleading with him to stop. Ijin gazes at Dayun with a puzzled expression and inquires whether he's correct in his assumption that these girls were her bullies. A wave of surprise washes over Dayun as she realizes that he's aware of this, and a sense of embarrassment tinges her expression. As Dayun contemplates the situation, the realization dawns on her that Ijin had fought on her behalf. With a forced smile, Dayun reassures Ijin that everything is fine now, urging him to stop. Ijin senses her deception but chooses not to address it. Ijin then informs Dayun that he will accompany her to her classroom. As Ijin and his little sister make their way to her classroom, we shift our focus back to Ijin's class. The room is filled with confusion, and students engage in discussions about the unprecedented events. Many inquire with their peers if it's true that Kim Ki-soo and his gang were defeated by a single individual. The two bullies from Ijin's class acknowledge Ijin's strength and express relief that they didn't confront him. Park, on the other hand, remains silent, his gaze fixed on the spot where Ijin once stood. Lastly, we see Kim's sister, Ijin, trembling in fear, her apprehension palpable. In her distress, Ijin begins to scream, berating the fallen bullies in front of her as morons. Back to Ijin and Dayun as they continue down the hallway. Breaking the silence, Dayun remarks that her brother must be exceptionally skilled at fighting, expressing her surprise. While they walk, Dayun gazes downward with a somber expression and apologizes to Ijin. He responds with a questioning, "What for?" Dayun explains that Ijin had to fight on her behalf both yesterday and today, and Ijin, with a hint of amusement, responds that he would always be willing to fight for her because she's his little sister. Ijin goes on to explain that in the place he used to live, most people were primarily concerned with themselves and often disregarded what happened to others, unless it directly affected them. However, he continues, there were rare occasions when even those self-centered individuals acted differently, and that was when their family became involved. The scene abruptly shifts, and we find ourselves transported to a war-torn location. Soldiers fire their weapons in all directions as explosions erupt in the background. Amid the chaos, the soldiers are shouting something, but their words remain unintelligible. Ijin's expression changes, and it appears as though he has just spotted someone amidst the chaos. Ijin stands over someone, his weapon pointed directly at them, poised for action. As we get a closer look at the person Ijin is pointing his weapon at, we realize it's a father standing in front of his frightened little girl. In this tense moment, Ijin begins to ponder the true essence of a family. Dayun, perplexed by what she just heard, reminds Ijin that he had mentioned he could barely remember their family. Ijin gazes affectionately at his little sister and utters that although he may not remember much, he is certain that they are indeed a family. As Ijin finishes his sentence, Dayun becomes aware of the gazes directed at them by those around. She then suggests to Ijin that she's fine and he can return to his own class. Confused, Ijin mentions that he promised to walk her to her classroom. Dayun then clarifies that they are already in her classroom. Dayun waves goodbye to Ijin and proceeds into her classroom. Content that he and his little sister have grown a bit closer, Ijin begins to make his way back to his own classroom. As Ijin enters his classroom, whispers spread among the students that he has returned. The two bullies who previously had intentions of bullying him now wear friendly expressions and commend the former mercenary, expressing amazement and curiosity about what he learned overseas. Ijin takes his seat, and Park, acknowledging the situation, remarks that he, too, found Ijin's actions quite impressive. The scene transitions to Kim slamming his fist against a table, contemplating the recent defeat. He ponders that there is something distinctly different about Ijin, both in terms of his aura and his fighting style. Kim's thoughts are interrupted by his sister, who questions how long they intend to remain in this state and suggests they were just taken by surprise. She still struggles to believe just how formidable Ijin truly is and exclaims that it's impossible for a single person to overpower all of them. Growing increasingly annoyed, Kim shouts at his little sister, telling her to be quiet and daring her to take action if she wants to continue speaking. In her final act of frustration, Kim's sister turns and walks out of the room, slamming the door shut behind her. As she walks away, tears stream down Kim's sister's face, and she reflects on the fact that they were the ones who were completely defeated by a single individual. Upon entering Dayun's classroom, Ijin expresses her jealousy, suggesting that Dayun's school life is bound to be fantastic now. She remarks that whenever something goes wrong, Dayun can simply seek refuge with her older brother. As Dayun continues to ignore her, the blonde bully thinks to herself that Dayun shouldn't believe she can just ignore her. As Ijin becomes increasingly annoyed that she has to silently observe Dayun, a recollection of the intense look Ijin gave her sends shivers down her spine. Despite her wounded pride, Ijin summons the courage to overcome her fear and decides that there's no way she's going to tolerate that situation. Dayun walks alone among a group of fellow students. Zooming in on her face, it becomes evident that she's deep in thought, wearing a melancholic expression. She ponders Ijin's words, contemplating whether she can now attend school without the fear of being bullied. The blonde-haired girl who had previously bullied Dayun now perches on a table, calling out for Dayun to approach. Meanwhile, Dayun stands with an armful of food, her thoughts drifting towards her hunger. In the subsequent scene, Dayun's tormentor grips her hair firmly, warning her never to speak out against her again. Dayun snaps back to reality when Ijin inquires about her thoughts. Dayun appears surprised as she hadn't noticed Ijin. He's curious about what had occupied her thoughts so thoroughly that she didn't hear him speaking. Ijin's sister apologizes to him and inquires if he had been waiting once more. He responds, "I'm really bad with directions." Dayun is left quite puzzled by this statement. She suggests that, since they are walking together, they should make a quick stop at the store to pick up some items. Dayun elaborates, explaining that her grandpa tends to get very hungry when he returns from work, and he appreciates it when dinner is ready in advance. While Ijin and Dayun continue their walk home, the two girls who bully Dayun lurk behind them. The blonde one remarks, "Dayun seems to be having quite a good time. Let's see how long she can keep that up." Dayun's expression grows intensely serious as she gazes at the food before her, pondering what she should choose. The girls behind Ijin engage in conversation about him, speculating on his origins and sharing their apparent attraction to him. Dayun takes notice of this and is impressed that, even outside of school, people are talking about how cool Ijin is. Dayun then inquires if her brother had a girlfriend in their previous place of residence. Ijin, taken aback by the question and not entirely comprehending what a girlfriend is, asks her to explain. She clarifies that a girlfriend is someone more than just a friend. Ijin's expression turns serious, and he responds that there was no one like that in his previous life. His sister expresses her surprise, mentioning that she had thought he would be popular. Ijin, upon hearing this comment, falls into silence, his expression suggesting that there might be more to the story. Dayun diverts her attention back to the food, thinking that Ijin probably had a tough time living alone. Suddenly, we hear Ijin asking her if she has a boyfriend. Dayun appears shocked as Ijin persistently presses the question and humorously provides an explanation of what a boyfriend is. She responds, "I don't have a boyfriend." Ijin follows up by asking her why that is. Wearing a forced smile, she replies that she has been too busy to pursue a relationship. The scene transitions to Ijin's home, where the lights are still illuminated. Ijin's grandpa announces that he has purchased something for Ijin, revealing a brand new phone. Ijin's grandpa explains that these days, all the students have one, and he has chosen a rather decent model for Ijin. Dayun gazes at the phone and observes that it's the latest model. Their grandpa beams with happiness and informs Ijin that he has already input both his and Dayun's phone numbers. Dayun appears surprised that their grandfather handled it, mentioning that she typically manages such tasks for him. The grandfather appears embarrassed and admits that he sought assistance from the store clerk. Dayun expresses her happiness and suggests that he could have simply asked them to take care of it for him. Blushing, the grandfather admits that he wanted to do it himself. He continues by mentioning that he had heard that unboxing things is an important experience, and although he needed to unbox it to input the numbers, he hopes it's alright. The grandfather, feeling somewhat embarrassed, inquires if Dayun is upset because he only bought one for Ijin. Dayun reassures him, saying that it's completely fine because her current phone still works perfectly. Ijin looks gratefully at his grandfather and says, "Thank you." The camera transitions to Ijin's bedroom, where he lies in his bed with the phone held above his head, gazing at the screen with a fascinated expression. The camera shifts once more to a massive building, revealing a single light shining from within. We observe the military man from the beginning, the one who taught Ijin before school. He receives a notification on his phone, and he appears somewhat surprised since it's already late at night. As he checks his phone, he finds a message from Ijin, instructing him to use this number from now on. The individual looks surprised, as he doesn't recognize the number. From behind him, another person appears and questions whether the lieutenant didn't buy Ijin a new smartphone back then. They speculate that Ijin might have simply changed his phone, as is common among kids nowadays. The lieutenant becomes angry and shouts that he bought Ijin the most expensive smartphone. The other person humorously suggests that Ijin might simply not like the brand. The scene shifts back to Ijin as he emerges from the shower. Dayun rushes past Ijin, exclaiming that she's going to head out ahead. Ijin comments that she's leaving early once more. Dayun, looking excited as if she's had too much candy, replies that she's already running late. Once again, we find Ijin alone in the room with a warm meal set on the table. We see Dayun glancing at her phone as she rushes somewhere, worried that she'll barely make it on time. The reason for her lateness becomes apparent: she spent the entire morning preparing the same soup her grandfather had enjoyed the day before. However, Dayun is content that her grandpa appeared delighted with her efforts. Suddenly, Dayun gets struck in the side by a foot. We witness three masked girls standing over Dayun, who appears injured and lying on the floor. The camera zooms in on the girls, but their identities remain concealed. The one in the front chastises Dayun, telling her that she should be more mindful of where she's going. Dayun appears frightened as she gazes at the figures before her. The person in front stares at Dayun and advises her to apologize when she accidentally bumps into others. Hearing this, Dayun quickly apologizes. Before Dayun can finish her sentence, the leader of the group strikes her in the face and demands that she be quiet, emphasizing that a simple apology won't suffice. Out of nowhere, one of the girls from the back expresses that she's feeling a bit out of sorts today and suggests to the others that they go to karaoke. Both of the other individuals in the group agree, seemingly changing their focus from Dayun. The girl from the back kneels down and asks Dayun if she would like to join them as well. Dayun recognizes the voice and instantly identifies the girl in front of her as Ijin. She looks traumatized. The scene shifts to the girls walking into a karaoke bar, discussing how poorly they performed the last time they visited. The shop owner grumbles about how the youth these days are too energetic and tend to scream excessively. As the owner opens the door, he appears traumatized. The scene reveals Dayun collapsed on the floor, covered in blood and bruises. As he reaches for his phone to call for help, Dayun suddenly gathers her belongings and walks out of the room without a word. The scene shifts to a surprised teacher inquiring about Dayun's whereabouts. One of the girls in Dayun's class informs the teacher that she is absent today. As we view Dayun's vacant desk, the teacher remarks that she wouldn't typically miss school without notifying them. Ijin is present in class and overhears everything. She begins to smirk like a villain. The girl sitting next to Ijin asks if they will be alright, to which Ijin feigns ignorance and asks what she means, asserting they didn't do anything. While playing innocent, Ijin reflects on the satisfaction of teaching a lesson to Dayun and believes that Dayun needed to understand her position in the social hierarchy. After school, Ijin waits once again for Dayun, but to his surprise, she doesn't show up. He considers the possibility that she might have already gone home and decides to call her. The scene shows Dayun curled up in her bed with her phone lying beside her. Her phone is ringing, but she remains motionless, not making a move to answer it. As Ijin enters his home, he observes that it is entirely dark, leading him to believe that she may not be there yet. However, his thoughts are interrupted when he spots Dayun's white shoes at the entrance, making it clear that she must be home. Ijin knocks on Dayun's door. You can hear Dayun's voice from the other side, sounding surprised that Ijin is already back. Ijin inquires if everything is alright because he waited for her at school. Dayun apologizes and explains that she's feeling a bit under the weather and had been napping. Ijin turns around and heads to the door, intending to buy some medicine for his younger sister. As Ijin gazes down to put on his shoes, he notices blood on Dayun's shoes. All emotions vanish from his face, and he takes on a stern and determined expression, as if he's prepared to confront someone.